The most widely published book in human history reveals that we are created in the image of God. Throughout our human journey, each encounter is an opportunity to see the shared humanity in ourselves and others. Regardless of one's views on religion, each experience and each story weaves us together towards a common path. A path of transformation, a process of growth and understanding, a recognition that, at our core, we share a common destiny. What does the search for truth really mean in our lives? How can we find a sense of unity in a world so diverse and divided? As we reflect on these questions, we start to uncover a fundamental connection that binds us all beyond our differences. Welcome to Created in the Image of God, Building Vibrant Communities, with our host, Wade Franson. Tonight's episode is the Mission Driven.
Hey everyone, and Happy New Year. It's episode 210 of Created in the Image of God. Now, this is actually the second show of 2026 because Sunday morning is also the Created in the Image of God show at 7 a.m. Central Time, but that one's always pre-recorded. So this is the first time I'm speaking live to the audience in 2026. And as I mentioned, episode 210, and I'm very excited about 2026. Last year, we really hit our stride. We've really had a high quality of guests, and they're just getting better and better. We're also formulating more clarity around vision and mission of what we want to accomplish through the show, accomplish with you, the audience. And it's just a very exciting time and a very exciting year. And we're kicking this first live show of the year off with a bang with the Mission Driven. But we somehow, our first mistake of the year was to not include the next word. It's the author of The Mission Driven Life, and her organization is called the Mission Driven Mom. Her name is Audrey Rindlisbacher, and she has a Master of Liberal Arts degree with a focus on education, and she's created an amazing organization for moms in the current environment in our country and in our culture to provide them with the tools needed to accomplish what they need to accomplish in this life. Let's invite her into the studio right now. Welcome, Audrey.
Hey.
Well, you and I have been planning this show for some time, and it seems like a year ago when we first met.
Doesn't it though?
And I'm very excited to have you here and address this really important topic because, this show is called Created in the Image of God.
Yeah.
And back in my days as a minister, I used to talk about the Bible being the handbook, right? There's no handbook for being human, and the Bible was there for it, right? But this idea of mission-driven mom, I know you're deriving a lot of information from that source, but you're packaging it up for this specific purpose in a way that's really powerful. And I want to understand myself and also for the audience, what sort of led to that. So like we always do, let's talk a little bit about your creation story right at the beginning. Who were your parents? Where were you born? What were the forces that shaped you and gave you the questions that helped you find the answers that you've found for your very own mission-driven life?
Okay, let's do it. My, I guess, family of origin story is kind of interesting. My dad came from a super tiny town that he was always proud to be from, and a pretty religious community. And we grew up, Christian, going to church every week. And but the story starts before then because my dad married pretty young, almost right out of high school. And he married a woman who, unfortunately, after their first child was born, exhibited a lot of symptoms of mental illness. And so she just got worse and worse and worse. Well, they continued to have children together. He continued to hope that everything would be okay. And after 5 children, he was like, I can't do it anymore. And he kind of left behind his faith for a time and went out and explored the world, met my mom in a bar. They got pregnant with me, and he wanted to marry her. And she had had really traumatic experiences with men. She had one sister who was schizophrenic. She grew up in a home with just her mom and her sister because her alcoholic father had abandoned them. Her grandpa was really mean. So she'd had all of these bad experiences with men. And so it took a lot of faith and trust for her to marry my dad. Then they proceeded to have 5 more children together. So my dad had 10 children. And the oldest 2 of his first 5 lived with us immediately, and then the others would come and go. And so all my life I had this, and I'll tell you more about it in a minute, but all my life I've had all these people that sometimes were full-time and sometimes part-time. I saw those older siblings as my siblings. I missed them when they were gone. I loved them desperately and was so happy when they came to visit. And then I'm like right in the middle of 10, but I'm also the oldest of 5. So I'm kind of a middle child and an oldest child. And then when I was 16 years old, I woke up one morning to hear my bedroom happened to be adjacent, the one right down the hall from my parents' bedroom. And I woke up to hear my mother screaming my father's name. And I walked down the hall and opened the door, and my dad was prostrate on the bed, and he just never woke up. And he had an aneurysm erupt, which triggered a stroke. And the following day, he was still in the hospital. We did an EKG, found out he was completely brain dead, and they had to take him off the machines. And so that was a very, at a really formative age. The older 5 children were gone, weren't living with us anymore, and they had come and gone. Some of them had lived with us in high school. And the youngest child was only 8. My youngest brother was 8. And so I was the oldest child at home, and he was there and healthy and fully functioning, and everything was great. And then he was gone the next. And he and my mom were very much in love. They'd had a really sweet relationship, and she was very lost without him. She started to stutter and couldn't speak clearly for many months. And one blessing was that like I said, she only had this one sister who was schizophrenic, and she didn't have any family that she felt she could rely on. And actually one night, the way she would put it is that my dad came to her in a dream and told her to move us near 2 of his brothers that lived close by each other. And that was when, and so she felt like that was from God, that my dad, she felt his presence. And so we moved up to Utah my senior year of high school near these 2 uncles. But in high school is where I met my husband. So he is grateful, I guess. And that senior year was, as you can imagine, incredibly rough. My mom was, she cried every day. She was trying to be a mom and trying to manage things. Luckily, my dad had a good insurance policy, so we were okay financially. But, here I was feeling like I needed to step in and be the mom of all these young children. And my husband and I became very close really quickly because he kind of stepped in as kind of a surrogate dad, surrogate big brother for my younger siblings that senior year. We did a lot of kind of parenting together. But then the story gets a little crazier because we were living in Oklahoma when my dad died, but previously we had lived in San Antonio, Texas. And he had a man that worked for him. His name was Tom. And he and his wife had a pretty troubled marriage. She was basically bedridden, kind of mentally ill, on a lot of medications, and really, really struggled. And they had become kind of couple friends with my mom and dad. They'd gone on a couple trips together and would play games on a Friday night together and things like that. Well, my dad passed, and during that next year, these 2, Tom and his wife, divorced. Now they had 7 children. And his wife had actually had an affair and wanted out of the relationship. And so he told her, I will give you a divorce if you give me custody of the kids. So he got custody of these 7 children. So in the meantime, we move away we'd already moved away to Oklahoma. We move away further away to Utah. And sometime during my senior year, he calls my mom to reconnect, check in on her, see how she's doing. And that last part of my senior year, they kind of have this whirlwind over the phone romance. She goes down and visits him. They decide to get married. And I graduated from high school. And just a couple weeks later, he sold everything. He put his 7 children, they were all younger than me, put his 7 children in a 15-passenger van, all his belongings in a trailer that he, pulled behind it. And they drove up to Utah and moved into our house. So it was pretty radical changes pretty fast. And
so I have to pause you here because I knew none of this. For the audience, we've had several conversations, but we always do this on the show. So I'm kind of in shock. So there were 17 of you, right? 17. And were there more to come yet? I mean, or is this
No, they didn't have more together. And the older 5 were gone. But the other, kind of kicker is so I had just graduated from high school, and Tom's oldest was going to be a senior. She was a little bit younger than me. And they decided we could do it. So they got married, and then they went to Europe for 2 weeks, and they left us to care for 12 children.
So the reason I paused you is I was going to say, I thought that your background was so different from mine, right?
Oh.
Well, my mother died of an aneurysm when I was 16.
Wow.
So that's the one connection. But we weren't living with her because there was already divorce. But that same summer, or actually the summer before this happened, because it happened in the winter, when I was 15 and I turned 16 that summer, I went to Sweden. And I realized later because I had spent time in Sweden as a child. But while I was in Sweden, my dad got married got engaged without me knowing anything about it. I actually got a letter from a neighbor saying, wow, with your trip to Sweden and your dad getting married and everything, it must be so exciting. I'm like, what? And when I returned, my dad was there with his little redhead and this little blonde, and they were my new little sisters. My point is, there's so many similarities in our background. And here I thought you had this more perfect, normal upbringing that led to you doing the mission-driven mom. This is one reason why I love this show format. So what happened then after you, and by the way, this whole, they went to Europe thing, they then went on a honeymoon, and she had 4, and we were 2 now because my older sister wasn't there. But so there were now 6 of us in this new family, and they're off on their honeymoon.
I'm telling you, it's like, and of course, all the things happened. The toilet stopped up and the car stopped running. I mean, all the things happened, of course,
Well, at least you guys didn't break into the Oktoberfest and steal the beer and get the church youth drunk like a certain unnamed individual.
No, we weren't that bad. No.
While they were on their honeymoon, so that when they came back, the pastor took them for a talk and said, you get your family under control or you're out of the church.
Wow.
But anyway, go ahead. It's your story.
Wow. That's crazy. Yeah. And I really relate. I remember at one point that spring before Mom remarried, she called me in and she was like, well, Tom and I have been talking and blah, blah, blah. And I can't remember if she'd been down to see him in person yet or not, but she was kind of like, well, he's proposed, or we're thinking about getting married, or whatever she said. And what do you think? And I'm sitting there thinking, well, you cry every day. Like, if we could stop the crying, she was just so unhappy. And I was like, whatever's going to help, and if that will help, great. But it kind of didn't. They had a very rocky marriage, separated multiple times. They ended up staying together. And once all the kids were gone, they were able to work things out and live together in more harmony. But it was incredibly rough. And for a long time, I was kind of her confidant. And so anyway, there's a lot that I could unpack and share about, all of those kinds of details. But basically,
so the origins of the mission-driven mom organization came where you were helping your own mother.
That's part of it. A lot of the essence of why the mission driven mom is because, you know, I had a bunch of younger siblings. I had done all kinds of babysitting. You know, I had grown up going to church. I had always anticipated that I'd be a mother. And, you know, I'd gone to college for several years. I'd actually done mission work. I'd lived in Europe. And I just, and then there I was in my late 20s with 3 little babies and a husband. And I felt so lost, so unprepared. And I felt like I didn't understand myself really well. And it felt like such a shame to me. I didn't end up graduating at that time. I ended up graduating later when I was with my bachelor's and my master's as a mom. But, you know, I just thought, well, here I've been in formal education for 15 years and I've lived abroad and I've done all these things and I still struggle to really know who I am. And I don't know how to, I just felt like I was drowning. I mean, my mom was separated. My husband's parents were, I mean, this will just give you a sense. They were just incredibly wealthy. And the one thing I'll tell you about their divorce, and all of this was happening at the first part of our marriage. My husband had a raging pornography addiction, which he told me about. I knew, but it got worse after we got married, not better. And I had surgery 2 weeks after we were married. They told me to get pregnant immediately because I had endometriosis. And so we had a baby right after our first anniversary. So life was just moving super fast. And my parents, my mom and stepdad were separated and unhappy. And then his parents were going through this really ugly divorce. You know, the one thing I'll tell you about it is when they finally finished their divorce, the judge said, you know, shame on you both. This is one of the ugliest divorces I've ever seen. It went on for years. It was awful. And so we're trying to manage his extended family and my extended family. And then I've got my younger siblings are in this home with my stepdad who got healthier and healthier, but was not a great stepdad and was kind of verbally abusive on and off. And so and I, you know, I was like, I am not prepared for life. I'm just fundamentally do not be prepared. I just do not feel, what were we doing all those years in school? Like, if it wasn't preparing me for this moment, if it wasn't preparing me to be a wife, to be a mother, to support people struggling with addiction or divorce or broken relationships or whatever. And then I was feeling drained and my self-confidence was flagging and just felt like I needed something for me and I couldn't figure out what it was. And I didn't want to leave my babies and go work full time, but I didn't know what else to do. So that pain, that angst, you know, from all of those pieces happening in our world at the same time were really what led me on a path to try to find answers and then later to try to share those out with moms.
Well, I think that's probably the appropriate breaking point here for the commercial segue into the next section. And here,
Right.
you know, we talked and said, well, how long will that first section go? Well, you know, depending on how much you have to say, it'll be really short. But that was a lot. And thank you so much for being so transparent, for sharing all that, for letting us get to know you and all those, you know, opportunities for growth, i.e. trials and tests that you had on your way to founding the Mission Driven Mom, writing The Mission Driven Life.
Yeah.
We're going to just take a quick look at a video that outlines that. And when we come back, we'll unpack it for everyone. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with more of Audrey Rindlisbacher on episode 210 of Creating the Image of God.
Are you tired of nurturing everyone else while feeling unimportant, depleted, frustrated, uninspired, and resentful yourself? Do you feel like you're losing a sense of who you are amidst your efforts to be a great mom? Do you struggle to find the balance between your personal growth and accomplishments and the demands of daily mothering? I get it. As a mother of 6, I have totally been there. And that's why we've created the Mission Driven Mom. Over the past 20 years, we have developed life-changing tools that help moms just like you find peace and purpose. As you partner with God and align your life with true principles, our resources have helped thousands of moms to find themselves while improving their mothering skills, to feel excited about life and the direction that they're moving, to feel better able to make and keep commitments to themselves, to feel enlightened, like they're being challenged spiritually, mentally, and emotionally, and to feel support and community from like-minded moms. And you can feel this way too. In order to do this, we've created the MDM Academy, which takes you on an enlightening path of self-discovery and personal growth. You'll work your way through the 3 levels of the MDM Academy, utilizing videos, workbooks, mentors, accountability partners, group discussion, and ongoing online support. Are you ready to better yourself, better your family, and better your community? Get started today by registering for Level 1 of the MDM Academy. We'll see you there.
So welcome back to Creating the Image of God with Audrey Rindlisbacher. One of the questions I have is, which came first, the mission-driven mom or the mission-driven life? And what's the relationship between the two?
So the mission-driven mom came, well, I guess you could say they were both born at the same time. The mission-driven life was meant to be, well, let me back up. One of the tools that really lifted me out of that muck and mire was discovering liberal education and going back and reading the classics and the great books for myself. I started to begin to understand what the natural law is, what principles are, what truth really is, and how to ground myself in that. And that's not to say that, religions don't help with that, because they do. They teach doctrines that are often truths packaged differently that can help us, lift ourselves out of difficulty. But that was a huge lift for me. So fast forward, one of the things that you mentioned when we first started talking was a book, The Hiding Place, that had a huge impact on me when I was a young mother. I just ached to be that family. It's the true story of the Ten Boom family who harbored saved the lives of over 800 Jews during World War II. And it was amazing that they saved those Jews, but what was more amazing was the kind of people that they were and why they would be the rare exception for the people who would give their lives for strangers. How do you become the kind of people that have the character and the means? And it was just second nature for them. And I wanted that kind of family. And that was a huge catalyst for me. I read Corrie ten Boom's other books. I discovered that they weren't always polished and put together like we see them in The Hiding Place. They had problems. Some of the books go back 100 years with 2 generations before the family we meet in The Hiding Place. And it was incredible to learn all about the backstory of the Ten Boom family. And so I just started asking myself the question, how do great people become great? I have a little vision board behind me of some men and women. Clara Barton and the Ten Booms are up there, and Martin Luther King Jr. and Albert Schweitzer, some of my heroes, whose lives I've studied in depth. And so I guess you could say the mission-driven life came first, in the sense that I was in the middle of learning about dozens of great men and women to try to crack some code of how do ordinary people do extraordinary things? How did the Ten Booms get from where they were to who I meet in that book? How did, were they just made different? Were they really different? Were they relatable to all of us? How did they become those kinds of people? And then in the meantime, had this profound experience at a women's meeting that showed me that women were in the pain that I had been in. So all of those things kind of came together. And I thought, wow, women are in the pain that I was in. And I would love to share with them the things that made a huge difference for me. What I know how to do is write and create curriculum and mentor, because I'd done that at the college level, and I'd created courses since that time and kind of taught classes online. So that's what I'll do. And so I took what I learned from those great men and women, distilled them down into those 7 laws of life mission that you were mentioning, and structured the content that I wanted to teach moms around those 7 laws to take them on a journey from that ordinary to extraordinary. Let us walk in the footsteps of these great men and women and do what they have done. And I needed women to understand the journey that they were going to go on. And so the book was really just originally meant to be like an opt-in, let me explain to you these 7 laws that are baked into this academy so that you have a reference point for what we're doing here at the Mission Driven Mom. And it just grew and grew and grew. I just had more and more stories from the 10 Booms books to share. I happened to find, I felt this was quite providential. I found the copyright holder, and they gave me permission to quote as extensively as I wanted and to use any photos I could find. And so I was able to tell a lot of their story in their own words. And I just decided I want people to see how this works in the lives of someone I admire. And by focusing on a family, I could tell multiple stories that were all interconnected, and I could show the impact on the whole family when individuals, make these choices to be mission driven in their approach to life, in the way that they live. Anyway, turned into a book. And so the book and the program launched simultaneously. But I guess in some sense, the laws came first. I don't know. That answers your question.
Well, it did. And thank you. And there's another question sort of on the tip of my tongue, which you've maybe kind of half answered as well. Let me see if I understand this properly. And that is, I've noticed from the start that you don't put the Bible and God front and center of what you're doing. And I know that that's fair, that it's built on that it's in the background. And one of the things you said was about doctrine, right? Having about the liberal arts helping you discover truth. And I get that, because my undergrad degree is a bachelor of liberal arts with a major in theology. And so it was a similar approach, but and it was not a theological seminary. We were very interested in practical application of what we are learning. So there's the theory, and sometimes there's the doctrine, which may or may not actually reflect what the Bible teaches, right? And then there's the rubber meets the road reality of the messy reality of your 16 siblings and how you got them, right? And what is all involved in trying to figure that out. And so, I mean, it was biblical in its proportions, your story, it's like the 12 sons of Jacob, right? The 12 tribes of Israel. Well, there were also some sisters in there that don't get mentioned that often. And there was a lot of swirl and a lot of mess in those origin stories in the Bible as well. But so in your own words, though, why do you choose to not lead with sort of the Bible and God, but rather lead with principles and laws that are derived from practical experiences of people living in it?
Well, we do and we don't. So the first law of life mission is to love God. And each of the 7 laws have a subtitle to give them a reference point or to flesh them out. And so it's love God, establish your divine center. So if we try to be a law unto ourselves, we will fail, because we're flawed. We don't have all the answers. We know we make mistakes. We know we mess up. We know we don't always listen to our consciences and do what we ought to do. So we cannot be a law to ourselves. So we've got to submit to some kind of higher being. And I'm a Christian, and I would love for people to be Christian, but it's not my job to navigate your religious and spiritual experience. It's just my job to point you to an ultimate source of truth outside yourself. That's, in my opinion.
Extremely well said. I mean, it's exactly what I believe. Couldn't have formulated it that clearly. Thank you. It's beautiful.
Thank you. And so I just feel like people need to navigate their own religious and spiritual journey on their own and navigate that with God. But I do, and this is not, it's not my idea. And you know this, Wade, because we're the privileged few who got the education that Americans lost. That's the truth. Yep. And a lot of what we're doing in our academy is resurrecting that and soft baby stepping women back into the education that they were robbed of, that they deserve. And we're showing them the tool set that goes all the way back to ancient Greece for using Socratic method to uncover truth that can liberate us. And of course, Jesus said it best, that the truth will make you free. There are objective truths. We can uncover them. We can practice them, and they will liberate us. And so that's the backbone of, that's the fundamental paradigm. That is my core belief system. And that is what everything we do at the Mission Driven Mom is built on, whether it's our podcast or any event that we put on or our academy. or, if you're following us anywhere, that's what you're going to keep bumping into. And that we're pushing back against a secular identity. We're pushing back against a strictly and only evolutionary perspective, and saying we came from somewhere, we share intelligence with a being that matters. There are ultimate objective truths that we can uncover, and we're going to help you to better understand what those are and make you the authority in your own life. It doesn't mean you shouldn't go to the doctor. That doesn't mean you shouldn't get outside information and do your homework, but it does mean that in the end, you have to make important decisions about yourself and about your life, and they should be as well informed as possible. And so you need really stellar discernment skills, and you need to be able to identify when something is actually true. And that's a skill set I feel like generations ago were better equipped to navigate, that we are really far from at this point, culturally.
Yeah, you've unpacked so much there, and so beautifully and so eloquently. I'll just throw a couple of thoughts out there to support it. This show is called Created in the Image of God, right?
Yeah.
Why is that? Well, everything you just said, and also male and female created he, them, right? Yeah. That's a fundamental truth that's been lost today as well. But also, when he created them, it says in Genesis, and right behind me I have this sun and moon, and it always reminds me that he put the greater and lesser lights in heaven. Yeah. It says in Genesis 1 verse whatever.
Yeah.
Rule the day and the night. What does that mean? Well, it means that when he created us in his image, he gave us sovereignty. Both the man and the woman were sovereign before God. It was only after they decided to disobey and prematurely, I say prematurely, I can unpack that if anyone has questions, eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. The reason I say prematurely, I better mention this, is Paul, much later, after Jesus, the second Adam, came, says, strong meat belongs to those who by reason of use have exercised their senses to discern good and evil. So he evokes the tree of the knowledge of good and evil and basically says, this is my interpretation, take it or leave it, your mileage may vary. It's not a doctrine, but it's my belief that he's saying we were always intended to become like God. To know good and evil, to be able to discern good and evil. But God told us to wait. We weren't ready. Once Jesus came in the second Adam, now we're all in it. We understand the impact of the school of hard knocks. Yeah. And when Adam and Eve took of that fruit, God said, Eve, your desire will be to your husband and he will rule over you. This wasn't a statement of divine order. This was a fallen situation in which that will be the natural outcome of the fact that you prematurely launched into this, right? So
interesting.
Again, Paul flips the script on that when he says, well, of course the husband is the head of the wife, as Jesus is the head of the church, who sacrificed and gave himself for. You want to be the head of your wife? Go sacrifice yourself. Go
leader.
Serve her. Stop imagining that you're the head in any other way, right? So all of this unpacks and unfolds, but the point I'm making is he gave us sovereignty, men and women.
Yeah.
It says all things were put under our feet, right? Except some things were not, i.e. the angels. It says later we'll judge the angels, right? But for now, all things material, all things physical, all things on this planet are put under our authority, right up to that sun and the moon, right up to the greater and lesser lights. What does that mean? It means when we submit to the light, we retain our sovereignty. When we independently with our own sovereignty investigate and discover the truth and reality, the truth will make us free. We will not become enslaved to anybody or anything, and we will retain our sovereignty. The minute we deviate from that and begin to trend even 1 degree towards the darkness, you will miss the moon by 100 million miles if you deviate 1 degree from the path that will take you there, right? Yeah. You begin to deviate 1 degree and you're already falling into some kind of enslavement. So those are my inputs to everything you said so eloquently in a different way.
Yeah. One of the things that you reminded me of, and I have a podcast on this if anybody wants to go listen to it, but we talk about it a little bit in the academy. It's a concept that Stephen Covey taught me, and it's so simple and so awesome and so clarifying. So we all know that we have a conscience, and the purpose of the conscience is to point us to the good, because the first principle of all truth is to pursue the good. And what Covey taught me, and he calls it the two consciences. So he talks about how we all have the gift of an inbred conscience. Now, sometimes through radical abuse or other misfortunes, people do have a deadened conscience or a really beaten down conscience. But for most of us, most of the time, there's a sense of, I should do this and I shouldn't do that. And he calls our intuitive understanding of what we should and shouldn't do, that little tiny voice that's speaking to us about our own behavior, that's judging our own behavior, is what he calls the divine conscience. Now, this aligns with, the natural law argument the philosophers have been making since Plato and Aristotle, that there are first principles that are intuitively known. Thomas Reid called them written on the heart of man by the finger of God. That's how he put it. So we have this divine conscience, this divine sense. We are moral beings. Some things are right, some things are wrong. We should pursue the good. But then Covey clarifies things for us by talking about what he calls a social conscience. And so one of the reasons why people's consciences become distorted, or all of our consciences don't always match, is because we ignore the divine conscience and listen to the social conscience. And that to a degree, we are all responsible for the social conscience that our civilization lives in. We contribute to it through our own listening to and obedience to our own divine conscience. And he talks about how he calls it educating the conscience. And that is feeding the good, our knowledge and understanding of the good, through choices that we make and through what we surround ourselves with, spending time with the greatest men and women, spending time in what Houston Smith calls the wisdom traditions, or the religious books of the world. Things that nurture our sense of what's good and what's right, what's true and what's beautiful, such that we obey it more, we attune it more, so that we can lean into our own divine conscience, and it gives us strength to resist the social conscience. And the social conscience fluctuates with generations, it fluctuates with civilizations. Now this is right, now this is wrong, now this is good, now this is bad. We see that happening all the time. Isaiah prophesied of that good would be seen as bad and bad would be seen as good. And so a real distortion of character can happen when we don't put in the work to strive for virtue in educating and honoring our divine conscience, and we let the social conscience just encroach, and it will begin to dictate who we become. We think that's being authentic by, when we listen to the social conscience, but actually it's just whatever's trending right now. So that's another way also of looking at the good, the bad, the evil, the objective truth, the discernment mechanisms.
Yeah, hold your thought. I want to just clarify. So one example might be the classic example, right? Hitler's Germany. And I spent 10 years in Germany. Yeah. Hitler's Germany developed a particular social conscience,
yes,
right? And
yes,
people adopted. So that's one extreme, yes, right?
Yes. Yes.
Another extreme in our nation, in my view, and I'll say something very politically incorrect here for some, is gender affirming care, right? Yeah. Where the idea is that when somebody is frankly suffering from gender dysphoria, which has been classified as a mental illness in the past, we're affirming their delusion about themselves and their body.
Yeah.
That has become a social conscience that many have adopted.
Yes.
And it's similar in my view.
It didn't even exist a generation ago, which is why we know that it's not necessary. It's not baked in to
it's something to look
the elements
at, right?
Of right and wrong we see cross-culturally.
Yeah. Another one that's similar to that is the whole opioid crisis, which I believe there are many, many reasons for, but one of the main sort of catalysts for it was the decisions to start declaring pain itself to be an illness that can and should be treated. So
Yeah.
patients would go in, and rather than actually trying to treat the whatever thing, there was this little chart with the frowny and the smiley face on a scale of 1 to 10. What is your pain level? And then these doctors became drug pushers, pushing,
Wow.
opium
Yeah.
as the solution to the defined illness,
Yeah.
of which is I feel pain,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
pain has traditionally always been something that gives us a signal and a warning to change some kind of behavior or to be more cautious. I mean, I quote this scripture where it even says about Jesus, he learned obedience through
Yeah.
the things he suffered.
Yeah.
But we want to take away and remove that suffering, so the social conscience is at any cost relieve any kind of suffering. This was the credential which the doctors used to prescribe the opium, the opioid drug, to you, and it became this massive organism of drug pushing
Wow.
based on the idea that the alleviation of suffering was the goal.
Yeah.
And this is also the same thing behind gender affirming care. This child is suffering, and we need to alleviate their suffering
Yeah. Yeah.
rather than address whatever underlying problems and challenges. And you and I talked a little bit about one of the principles about small choices every day.
Yeah.
So having said that, and perhaps derailed you, finish up your thought and then tell us, or maybe you were done, but then tell us a little bit more about those 7 rules or laws, if there were 7 or whatever they
Yeah.
were,
Yeah.
starting with loving God.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's it. And I'll give you just one last example from a mom's perspective. Through feminism, motherhood became denigrated. And another simple example for moms is women that want to have children, especially women that want to stay home with their children, have there's a social conscience that tells them that that's not noble enough, that's not worthy enough, that's not a beautiful thing to pursue. And so they've got to listen to their divine conscience to resist what society tells them. So that would be another simple example. But so the 7 laws of life mission is a pattern of choices that I found over and over again in the lives of these men and women that I studied. And I was very selective. I wanted to find men and women whose impact in society was unquestionably good. So there's no question that what Mother Teresa did is universally considered good, or Gandhi, or Albert Schweitzer, or Clara Barton, people of that caliber, so that I could deconstruct what did they choose over and over again that made them able to do the work that they did. I mean, even to be able to see the problems that they saw. So the first thing that they did was choose to submit their will to a higher power and a higher truth, to establish a divine center, to nurture their divine conscience. The next thing, the second law that they lived, was to love themselves. And by this, we mean they strove for self-mastery. The self-love movement has some healthy and some very unhealthy components to it in our modern day. And so we seek to clean that up. We focus heavily on self-care, which means meeting your real needs, self-management or self-leadership by governing your thoughts and emotions, and self-discovery, which really people don't know how to do, or especially moms that are busy with children often really push to the side. Our academy is built in 3 levels. It's built around the 4 foundational laws. The level 1 is those first 2 laws. We deep dive into loving God and especially loving yourself. And the argument that I make is those are the foundation of all of our other relationships. The health of our relationship with ourselves and the health of our relationship with some kind of divine being to which we submit and listen determines the health of our other relationships. And those are the things that we can absolutely control and that we should work on all of our lives. Yeah, go ahead.
As you talk about these first two laws, something jumped
Mhm.
out at me, which perhaps should have always been obvious, and that is that the two laws that Jesus gave, right? Love
Mhm.
God with all your body, mind, heart, and soul, and then love your neighbor as yourself. It skips over the self-love, but it's
Yep.
inherent, it's obvious.
Yes,
If
as
if
yourself.
you don't love yourself, how can you love your neighbor?
Yes. Yes.
I've heard that so many times, but I've always kind of dismissed it because I perhaps have more of a martyr, self-sacrificing identity mentality. And
Mhm.
so I kind of dismiss and poo-poo the idea that I should love myself,
Yeah,
right? Because we should esteem others better than ourselves. We should put the needs of others before ourselves, et cetera, et cetera. But inherent in that, love your neighbor as yourself. So if you're mistreating and shortchanging yourself,
yes,
then how on earth can
yes,
you love others
yes,
as yourself? So
yes,
it's
and we
inherent and natural that we would
yes,
love and take care of ourselves. But I love your description of cleaning it up, because the reason I kind of resist that whole thing is, yeah, the whole self-love and,
yes,
self-actualization and me first. Give me a break.
I
Without
know.
that first law, it is toxic and counterproductive.
Yes, 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 and I have a video called the two great commandments or the two great laws or something like that early in the academy discussing exactly what you just said, and that there's a deep correlation. I'll give you one super quick example that I think is super helpful. Mother Teresa, a lot of people don't know this. She first felt called to be a nun, and then she was first a teacher, then the principal of a private girls' school in India. And then while she was there, she felt the call to go out and care for the poor. She worked with the Catholic Church for well over a year to get permission to just go out on her own and try stuff. And then eventually it became an order, and it grew and grew and grew. But when she first went out to do the work on her own, she was ignoring her own needs. She wasn't what we would call loving herself by caring
Yeah.
for herself properly. She would work too many hours and not get enough sleep. She would push herself way too hard. She would take food with her to go out into the slums during the day and give her food away and not eat throughout the day. And her health crashed. She was unable to do the work she felt called to do because she didn't first love herself. And we talk a lot about love as an action, that the feelings of love follow the actions of love, and that even if we don't feel love for God or we don't feel love for ourselves, we can take actions of love, and those feelings of self-approval and self-acceptance will follow. So that's level 1, and that's the first two laws. And then the next law is our level 2 in our academy, and it's loving truth, and that means to live a principle-centered life. And that's where we deep dive. We teach women the nature of principles as delineated from the natural law, what first principles and principles are. We teach them to write actionable principles for themselves, and we give them tools for practicing those in their real life. And there's a project that goes along with level 2 where they delineate and practice principles of motherhood for themselves. And then the fourth law is loving humanity, and this is to become a servant leader. This is servant leadership, as you mentioned earlier, is the highest level of leadership. And we cannot be good servant leaders, I believe, unless we have two things which we focus on heavily in our third level of our academy, which is servant leadership and worldviews and world religions. So we do a deep dive into some basic overviews of history, and then we spend time learning about key beliefs and views from different worldviews and different world religions. And then we work really hard to find what we share in common with all of them. And we use what we know about the natural law and principles to build bridges so that we can link arms with anyone and we can better understand them. We can't really meet them where they are and serve them properly unless we understand them. And
So I got to jump in here again, and
yeah,
this is amazing because I just announced on the Sunday show, which was pre-recorded,
uh-huh.
the New Year's revolution for Created in the Image of God, and it's this
Mhm.
program called Facets of One, right? And
Okay.
it's a study guide. It's a book in production. It's going to come out.
Mhm.
It's sponsored by the Royal Falcon Foundation and other things. It has 9 study guides, but the first one is there is one God. And it takes the Shema. If you know what the Shema is, it's Deuteronomy 4, verse 6, I believe.
Okay.
Hear, O Israel, the Lord thy God, the Lord is one. And I asked AI to say, does the Shema exist in other religions? I was not
Mhm.
expecting that it did, and it does in every
Mhm.
single one of them, right?
Mhm.
But the whole purpose of facets of one is exactly what you just described,
Yeah.
to let us know that we have much more in common than we have
Yes.
different. Getting back to
Yes.
doctrines and how they get somehow misconstrued,
Yeah.
but this is a 9-week program where each week you just read these quotes from the different world religions that all
That's super
basically
cool.
say the same thing, and it's
Mhm.
just different facets of the same diamond, and it just breaks through this whole separation based on identities
Yep.
and negativity. Somebody might have 8 good qualities and you're picking up on the one negative one.
Yep. Yep.
Anyway, go back over to you. I just had to throw that
Yeah.
in there.
That's awesome. That's beautiful. We just need as much of that as possible. So those are called the 4 foundational laws. We return to those all our lives. We get better at being servant leaders. We get better at applying principles. We get better at loving ourselves and loving God. All of our lives, we keep returning to those. But what those 4 laws do, especially when we do the self-discovery right, at the end of level 1, we write a mission statement and we start working on developing our gifts, so that the goal is, like in the academy, before you graduate, you do a mission project. So we help you look at your gifts and talents that you've uncovered and hopefully been working to develop, and needs in your community, and pairing those in a way that you can now nurture your community, bring your family along on that journey with you, and bring principled solutions to real world problems, is what we call them. So the next 3 laws are the leadership laws. You discover, you hear the call, and then you courageously execute, and then you do it again and again and again. And that's what a mission-driven life looks like, is that you're constantly pairing your unique abilities that you can bring to real-world problems and striving to bless the lives of the people around you, bringing principled solutions using your gifts in your unique way, whether you're an artist or a musician, whether you like to build systems or do scientific. It doesn't matter who you are or what you do. You can bless the world in ways that, and to me, aside from probably family and motherhood, the greatest joy to be found is in a no strings attached service to those around us. But the most meaningful way is when we're bringing our uniqueness to bear. That's why the subtitle of the Mission Driven Life book is Discover and Fulfill Your Unique Contribution to the World, because that is something that we can all do. And it's just this rich source of joy for everyone involved, and everyone is better for it. And love abounds in those spaces where we look outside of ourselves and ask, how can I use my uniqueness to lift someone else? And then you do that, and the world's a better place.
Wow. I'm just floored and in awe at how well put together your program is, and
Thank
how
you.
rock solid and full of integrity, and how concise and compact and how powerful it is. Not that you need my endorsement, not that not that my opinion matters, but I have been around the block and I've seen a
Yeah.
lot. And
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of efforts to put together programs that do this kind of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, you are way up there in the
Thank you.
coherence, in the spiritual, intellectual, and rubber meets the road coherence of the program that you've created. Hats off and kudos. And guests of the show are on episode 210. Know that I love all my guests, but I don't often use that kind of superlative. I mean, this is really impressive.
Thank you. Thank you.
And only took 16 siblings to help you get there.
Right. A lot of pain and effort. I worked on myself for a really long time, discovered what my own gifts were, discovered how I could use them to bless people, started, speaking, writing curriculum, and watching people come to life and seeing them grow. And anyway, it was a beautiful experience. And so then when we brought this to bear, I had already taught classes with some of these elements. I found 2 women for a year. We met 5 o'clock in the morning every week and vetted materials and just tried to give women the best of the best, in a layout, in a format that built on itself, that was sequential, that led somewhere, and that brought out their best. So
wonderful. Well, we're going to go to a very quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to ask the question, where are you growing next?
okay.
Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with more of Audrey Rindlisbacher.
Every child deserves a place where they feel seen, safe, and supported. Those who guide children also carry the responsibility to protect them. Written by 2 legal experts with over 60 years of experience, this essential resource helps organizations build strong child protection policies, recognize risks, train the right people, and respond when it matters most. From schools to churches to mentoring programs, this is a blueprint for real protection, made practical, sustainable, and clear. Protecting other people's children. A powerful tool for those who choose to care. Available now at Amazon.
And for those who recall, we had Debbie Osborne, one of the authors of that book, on the show some episodes back. There's another woman who really used a laser focus to create something of immense value. So with everything that's going on, where are you growing next? I know right before we launched the show today, you told me that you're reintroducing something that you've had before. Maybe it's that, maybe it's other things that you want to conclude with here today.
Well, and I could tell you more, my own journey of creation in this company, which outgrew me, and then we went quiet, and now we're rebooting, which has been a joy. We learned from the mistakes we made in the past. We've had, like I've said, 600 plus women, in the academy in the past, but relaunching so many things and bringing the academy back with better mentoring, better systems, all of that stuff. But also reintroducing we call it the MDM celebration. And it's an annual event in the fall where we gather as women, and you do not have to be in our academy or involved in our programs at all to attend. It's a day-long event. Every year has a unique theme, and we use all of the tools. We call it the MDM way, classical resources, Socratic discussion, journaling, all those kinds of, group activities, all those kinds of things to get our minds around a concept. We always give you a principles list. You leave that day with an action plan around what we've learned. And then in the evening, which is really fun, we have an award ceremony. And any woman who has finished a level of the academy can walk across stage and receive a certificate. And we celebrate those women who are working hard in the academy. And this year, our theme is Mothers of Creation, which perfectly aligns with your show. If anyone's interested in learning more about it, they can go to themissiondrivenmom.com and click on conference, and you can learn all about that and join us that day. We'd love to have you. This coming year, it's going to be in Salt Lake. There's a beautiful 100-year-old library there with just 3-story windows, and it's absolutely gorgeous. We want it to be beautiful, as well as we want truth and goodness and beauty to be present there. And we'll gather and we'll learn all day long together, and we'll have an award ceremony that evening. It'll be this coming September. So that's kind of where we're growing. We have the best team we've ever had, and just getting the word out, letting women know about what it is that we're doing, and bringing the academy, the book, the podcast, the tools and resources to them.
Awesome. That's very exciting. I love the reboot. I love the seminar. I love the graduation. What can this show do? Royal Falcon Foundation, Soup Media. One idea to help you and those you're working with. One idea I have already is there's a woman who has a podcast in our podcast network with Soup Media. Her name is Barbara Breon. She's a pastor in Virginia. An African-American woman. She does something called Unboxed on Purpose. And it's the idea is letting God out of the box. She's a Baptist minister, but she's worked with us. We did this program together for young people out in Arizona, flew her out there, and did a video on it. Really amazing thing where we had the kids plant a farm to table garden for this resort it's called the Desert Rose Baha'i Institute, and but they didn't really have much blossoming in the desert yet, right? Even though that was so we put this whole garden in, and we brought in an expert where we had bat guano and carbon material, and really created a whole garden fenced around, protected with watering and everything. And the kids did this in like 110-degree heat.
Ugh,
And
yeah, it's hot out there. Used to live out
yeah,
there.
exactly. So anyway, I mean, I'd love to make an introduction. I think you'd be a
I
perfect
would
fit
love
for her
that.
show. And she maybe even has more women in her audience than I do. So,
That would be
you know,
wonderful.
let's
Thank you.
stay in touch and see
Yeah.
what we can do together in this year of 2026.
Yeah. If anyone
We're-
listening wants to get started, they can get 3 chapters of the book for free at themissiondrivenmom.com, so they can get a feel for what the book is like in case they'd want to buy a copy of their own. But they can go get 3 free chapters of it.
And the book's available on Amazon, or you could go into Barnes and Noble and order it, I'm sure. Is that right?
No, actually not.
Oh, it's available exclusively through your website.
Yes,
Mission Driven
for
Mom.
now. Yep,
Okay. All right.
yep. We have reasons for that, but yeah.
Okay. Well, I know we're actually kind of out of time already.
Yeah.
Didn't have much time to engage with any audience, which has been, I think there's been a lot of just really listening tonight rather than a lot of chatter, which
Yeah.
sometimes there is. Your story and what you've done is just amazing. But
Thank you.
to leave the audience with as we wrap up for tonight.
What do I want to leave them with? Is that what you asked?
Yeah. Yep.
I hope that they know that they were created intentionally. I hope they know that they are incredibly unique. One thing I would encourage everybody to do, if they never do anything with a Mission Driven Mom at all, I would encourage a great starting place is to go grab Cure for the Common Life by Max Lucado and start doing some work by exploring your past. And he gives you some exercises in the back of the book that are really enlightening to begin to discover what is so unique about you and what you have to give. You have something very important to give, and your level of discipline, your level of submission, your level of honoring truth. It's interesting because we don't really often think about it this way. We want to feel really empowered and all these kind of things, but the most powerful attributes are humility, meekness, teachability, and those are the things that really help us to grow. But really knowing you have unique work to do. I love the way Max Lucado says it. He says, if you're not you, the world misses out. And that's absolutely true. And so I hope that you'll know that you might feel ordinary, but there are extraordinary things that you can do. And you are in a time and a place where the world misses out if you don't make the contribution that you can make. That's going to mean you're going to have to work on you, because that's the only thing you can change. But you can change you so dynamically. You can be so much more than you think that you can be. Just trust the process and do the work, because there's so much joy and fulfillment and meaning, waiting on the other end for you and for others.
Again, beautifully packaged up and articulated. Thank you so much, Audrey. I do look forward to staying in touch and having you back on the show. We are out of time, and I mentioned earlier, I'm really trying to end the show within an hour.
Yep.
Didn't quite make it, but almost. I have one task left to do, and that's to share the sneak peek for next week's show.
Mm-hmm.
But Audrey, let you and I stay in touch, and I'll continue to share out what you're doing, and perhaps we can find some ways to work together.
Thank you, Wade. So great to be here.
Everyone in the audience, remember, you are created in the image of God, and God loves his creation. Audrey just said that better, but that's my tagline, so I have to say it. And here's the sneak peek for next week's show. We'll see you there 7 or 8 p.m. Central Time on Creating the Image of God. And don't forget, we also have our pre-recorded show every Sunday morning at 7 a.m. at the same time. Audrey, thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much.
If you want to chat, hang out for a couple of minutes, if you need to run, please do. We'll just air the sneak peek and then shut down the show.
God bless everyone.
Hey everyone, it's Wade Franson back with another sneak peek for Created in the Image of God, episode 212, airing on January 13th. I have in the studio with me a very well-respected and eminent scholar. I will say he may downplay that, but I'm very impressed by his work, and I've looked at a number of his books, one of which is called The Moral Teachings of Jesus. And David Gushee is a Christian ethicist who believes that evangelicals have lost their way, but he sees the birth of post-evangelicalism as a space for growth and the transformation that's happening in some as a source of hope. Welcome to the studio, David.
Thanks, Wade. Great to be with you.
And it's a pleasure. I'm looking forward to this. So in terms of framing this discussion, quickly share for the audience these two terms, evangelicals as you see them today, and then post-evangelicals. What does that mean? Unpack it.
I would say that at its best, evangelicalism was a dynamic movement of committed Protestant Christians who wanted to follow Jesus seriously, who took the Bible seriously, who had a passion for the Christian faith. And they did a lot of good in the world. But my concern is that evangelicalism has been politicized desperately in the last 50 years, and in the last 10 years has taken a turn over the cliff with our current president. And many evangelicals are concerned about it as well. But out of the discrediting of evangelicalism in a lot of circles is a new movement being born called post-evangelicalism with vibrant churches. Let's just say I think post-evangelicalism has the best of the evangelical spirit without the problem that I just described. Other problems as well. So I'm in the post-evangelical world trying to help resource it intellectually, and that's what a lot of my work is about right now.
Wonderful. So I'm watching The Chosen right now, a little bit behind the curve on that. Started watching it just a few months ago. And so immersed in that first century, Roman occupation of Judea and Jesus emerging and leading his disciples through a transformation. Do you see similarities there?
I do know this. I know that every renewal movement in the history of the church has always gone back to Jesus, has always studied closely the way of Jesus. And that involves taking the context seriously as well. Yes, Jesus was a person who emerged from the margins of the Roman Empire and utterly without fear, motivated by a prophetic messianic vision of God. He led a movement of renewal of Judaism that became the birth of what we now know as Christianity. And the post-evangelicals, the first statement of the post-evangelical collective, which is a group I'm involved with, is we are committed to living in the way of Jesus. So I don't think there's any hope for Christianity without a return to Jesus himself. And I see signs of that now, and that is a source of hope for me.
Amen. We're going to spend a whole hour talking about that and unpacking it. So you are not going to want to miss the show, number 212 on January 13th, 8 p.m. Central Time with David Gushee on Created in the Image of God. Be there.